Hello, everybody, and welcome to Donkeysaddle Projects' final Freedom Film event for 2021. We're going to wait a few moments to let some folks still join. There are still folks who are joining. And while we're waiting, if people want to use the chat box, it would be lovely if folks can introduce themselves, maybe introduce where you're zooming in from, and maybe what makes you interested in joining us today. My name is Jen Marlowe. I'm with Donkeysaddle Projects, and I made the film that we're going to be watching today, To Treat Kids Like Me. And I am from Duwamish territory, otherwise known as Seattle. And if folks want to use the chat box to introduce themselves, it'll be great to know who's with us today.
Yeah. Where do I go for that?
For the chat box, there should be, you should have something called chat down on your Zoom preferences that you can utilize to type. So we have Iman joining from Birmingham. Welcome, Iman. Miranda, who will meet in more depth during the discussion, from Defense for Children International, Palestine, joining from DC.
I go to what?
Home, Apple TV.
And Meredith from unceded Duwamish territory. Hello, Meredith.
The correct what?
See ya.
How do you make the drops
I
come out
think
of
you squeeze.
You turn on.
I think I'm not
And Patty from Gaza Strip. And if folks are not intending to be speaking, if it's possible to put the mute button on, and that'll help us not have a lot of background noise. We have Janet Steyer from LA. We have Linda from the traditional territories of many nations, including Linda, will you be able to do a better job than me? I think maybe at pronunciation. Is it Mississaugas of the credit? And
Mississaugas of the credit. The Anishinabeg, sometimes called Anishinabek, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Those were the traditional nations in the territory where I live, which we now call Toronto, Canada.
Thank you for that, Linda. And we've got Kate Schwartz from Denver, Bobby Siegelbaum from the Bronx, a member of JVP, Bill Carpenter from Asheville, North Carolina, home of the historic Cherokee Nation, Dor Stein, who produces and hosts Gaza Corner in the NPR affiliate of KALW in San Francisco. Great to meet everyone. Layla, originally from Lifta in Palestine, now in New Jersey. Morris from Chippewa territory, now Heartland, Michigan. We've got folks from so many corners of the world. It's so wonderful to meet everybody. We'll give people about 1 more minute to try to join, and then we will go ahead and start. And I encourage you to scroll through the chat and see different folks, where folks are coming from, since I'm probably not going to get to read them all. So we will go ahead and get started. Hold on, let me go ahead and pin myself since we've got a big group here. It is really very heartwarming to see such a wonderful and large group to join Donkeysaddle Projects on our final Freedom Film for 2021, which is To Treat Kids Like Me. I'm very much looking forward to showing this film, which was a co-production with Donkeysaddle Projects with 972 magazine, and also supported by Just Vision. And this event is co-sponsored by Just Vision and by Defense for Children International Palestine. And we'll get a chance to hear more from DCIP after the film, as well as other partner organizations who were instrumental not only in making the film, but in advocating for the right for healthcare for Palestinians all over Palestine and the occupied territories, and specifically in Gaza, including not only DCIP, but Physicians for Human Rights Israel. And the film itself is very short. It's only about 13 minutes long. And after the film, we're going to have the opportunity to have a conversation with a panel of really incredible humans who all have been working and fighting for the right for medical care for Palestinians in the occupied territories. And we also have a really extraordinary opportunity to hear directly from Mohamed Salah, who is the young man, one of the people who are featured, young men who is featured in the film. You'll get a chance to meet Mohamed as a younger child. He was 13 years old, 12, almost 13 at the time that I filmed him. He's a few years older now. And we'll have the chance not only to get the update on Mohamed's case from Mohamed himself, but there'll be an opportunity to see how things have progressed or de-developed in Gaza since the time of the film. So I will be very excited to introduce all the folks who are our panelists who will be speaking to us at the conclusion of the film. But before we get too far down that road, I'd love us to have the opportunity to watch the film itself. And my wonderful colleague, Kate, who is from Just Vision, one of the co-sponsoring organizations, is running all the behind the scenes tech. So hopefully screen share and Zoom and all those things will work beautifully. And we'll get the chance to watch the film. So you've got a birthday coming up, yeah? If you could have one dream for your birthday, what would you dream?
أرجع أمشي. اسمي محمد نافذ جمال صالح، عمري 12 سنة. أصبت في مسير العودة 15.
هاي الإصابة.
بقدرش أمشي، بتثني الحال هذا مشيت.
شرد مني والله شرود نطعني البرندة، كنت حجزاء منعاه انه يطلع لانه قبل هيك صاوب كنا بنتغاز.
ايوه هو في العناية
صاوب بطلق ناري فقطع عنده أوردة والشرايين، فجأة انه عنده قطع في العصب بالكامل في رجله. لقيته هو بده زراعة عصب، عندنا فيش امكانيات لزراعة العصب فحولوه على مستشفى المقاصد.
الوضع الصحي بصورة عامة في قطاع غزة هو متردي وسيء جدا.
And the fact that Palestinians in the Gaza Strip need to go to treatment in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem or even Israeli hospitals, it is because of the closure.
تمنع دخول الأدوية بشكل سهل وسلس إلى قطاع غزة، كما تمنع الكوادر الطبية من الخروج إلى الخارج.
And also in the past 10 years, the wars on Gaza injured severely the health system. So Israel has duties because Israel is the major party imposing the siege on Gaza.
ثلاث مرات قدمنا مستشفى المقاصد تحويله ويجي رفض.
وهذا التقرير بتاع الاندونيسي لما طلع من العملية النهائي انه عنده عجز تقريبا 80%. وهذا كتبناه احنا لليهود، هذا للجيش الاسرائيلي على ايرز عشان نسفر الولد.
هاي هذا في شهر 11. هذا في شهر 11. هذا موعد للعملية وراح علينا. جانا بردك بالرفض.
طلعت من الدار وضلت نصيح برا.
ليش كنت بالضبط تصيح؟
لأن ارتفضت تجي جنبي. أنا بقيت حامل دبابة وإيش حجر، ما عملتش شيء كأي طفل طلعت على السلم.
عندي كمان رسالة. يعني طفل زي هذا بيجي رفض، نفسي أعرف ليه. يعني واحد والله ما هو عارف. هاي عندك بردك، هي بردك هذه 17/2 رسالة محمد صالح تقرير طبي جديد إنه صالح بالفحص. 17/2 معدنا احنا نكون في 18/2 في مستشفى المقاصد لإجراء العملية. راح علينا هاي 3 موعد للعملية ويروحن علينا، وهينا بنستنى موعد جديد إنهم يرنوا علينا. فإحنا يعني بدنا يعني يسعوا يستعجلوا إن هذا عملية زراعة العصب، لأنها كل ما اتأخرت كل ما ساءت رجله. عنده العصب حيموت. حكت لي إنه ما عملش عملية العصب، عنده العصب حيموت وحتكون يعني عمليته حساسة جدا.
Parents that they approach us didn't receive the permit because they were denied, or they received an answer frequently that they're under security check, which means also denial because they didn't reach hospitals.
الله يرحمها يعني ما كانت تتحدث ولا تحكي، يعني كل الوقت كانت في يعني شلل دماغها، حالتها صعبة جدا يعني. ما فالدكتور قال لي هذا عندها اضطرابات تغذية، فمن الواجب انه بدها تحويل يعني. هي ريفرال. عن بداية الطلب انه اخذ رفض، مثلا رفض اللي هو بالفحص الامني، بروح يجدد موعد جديد. الموعد الجديد طبعا انت عارف بقعد حوالي 10 ايام لما يجي، وبحطوا فيه كمان 30 يوم قدام لموعد لتاريخ الموعد اللي هو تبع المستشفى. يعني بين كل طلب وطلب حوالي شهر. يعني ال3 مواعيد اللي ارتفضت فيهن قاعد حوالي 90 يوم. يعني فترة مش بسيطة للمعاناة لها، كان 90 يوم مش بسيط.
هل حاولتوا تغيروا المرافق؟
لا ما فيش عندي مين بده يطلع فيها، هذا صعبة حالتها يعني، ما حدش بيقدر يحملها، اسمحي لي في هالكلمة يعني، كون وضح اللي هي فيه يعني صعب. ما فيش واحدة بتقول لك أنا بدي أروح أتحمل المسؤولية يعني. بيعرفوش الأكل بالسرنجة، ما كانتش حتى تقدر عملية البلع عن طريق الرضاعة، ما فيش حدا بيقدر يعني إنه
راسها كبير وجسمها ضعيف،
يجازف إنه ياخذها أول شيء.
4 ونص يعني بالنسبة لهذه 6 سنين.
وكانت عند المرة يعني كانت معها الولد الصغير هذا اللي تو إسلام، الطلب الثالث يعني توفت قبل ما يجي الموعد ب10 أيام. كون انه العلاج يعني تاخر علينا في رحله العلاج، فهذا اللي صدمني يعني.
There is something arbitrary in the manner that the permit regime functions.
وبالتالي في المرة الأولى قد تعطيهم التصاريح اللازمة، ثم المرة الثانية ترفض إعطائهم التصاريح لتعطيها إياهم في المرة الثالثة، لتمنع في المرة الرابعة والخامسة.
In many cases, after we approach the army or we approach the court or the media and we try to create some pressure, they receive a permit. It says something about the reliability of the answers or the allegation of security threats. If you have family members who work maybe in the health ministry, then you can be labeled as someone who has family ties to Hamas. If you have family members who stays in the West Bank without the Israeli permit, then you can be labeled as a security threat.
ونحن نعتقد هذا نوع من العقاب الجماعي تجاه المدنيين في قطاع غزة.
هو الفصل الأول ما دوامش فيه لأنه كان في المستشفيات وتعب وكان يعني أولها. الفصل الثاني تواصلت المؤسسة إنه يروح 3 أيام في الأسبوع.
بقيت أحبها، بقيت كل يوم أروح وألعب مع أصحابي وألعب كورة، بس لقيت انحرمت.
أنا ابني بمعناه يعني لما بودي أخوته على المدرسة، واحد بشيل له العكاكيز وواحد بشيل له الشنطة وواحد بشيل له على كتافه، إنه الكهرباء اللي بتجي مش طبيعية، بتألم من الكهرباء، عنده العصب بضرب.
When you see the other kids going to school and you're not able to join, how does that feel?
بصيح وبعدي.
أمي شهيدة 8 يعني أنا لما ابني بتألم كله بروح بنام في بيته وأنا اللي بسهر عليه. طب ليش ترفضوه؟ ليش ترفضوه؟
كريم من يوم من ولد هو تعبان. كريم ولدته 7 شهور. ولدته 7 حطيناه في العناية المركزة 5 أيام. تفاجأنا إنه صار أصفر. اكتشفنا بعد عمره 35 يوم صوروا صورة لدماغ اللي هم بيقولوا لي دماغه مش مكتمل، فيش اكتمال في الدماغ. الدكتور محمد بكر باب محمد بارك الله فيه والدكتور محمد أبو الندى حولونا على المقاصد. الحين صارت المشكلة التحويل من وين المشكلة؟ من نفس اليهود. صاروا يرفضوني. ليش؟ ما بتعرفيش. قدمت من 1 سنة و3 شهور، الحين عمره 2.5 سنين وأنا برفض. هذول تقارير أمه لكريم إنها مريضة. قالوا أمه تروح، قلت لهم أمه مع إنه أمه بنتي مريضة معها سكر ومعها ارتجاع في الصمام ومعها ضغط عمرها 25 سنة وانجبرت تروح فيها. هي تعبانة بالمقاصد، بدي أبدل تبيد المرفقة، بدي أحاول. هاي تقرير كريم التحويل اللي سافر عليها. الحين رفضوني 9 مرات، يبعثوا لي رسائل. بدي أقول لك كريم ما بتعرفيش إيش بيعنيني. عندي 5 أحفاد، بس كريم حياتي كلها، عشان أنا اللي تعبت على كريم وأنا اللي ربيته. وبتمنى من ربنا يعني إنه حدا يساعد كريم وإنه حدا ياخذه هيك ويحكمه وإنه يفرجوا عني الأمن، عشان أنا أظن أسافر أحكم كريم.
It's not easy. Sometimes the fact that you can help only in specific case and only for the short term, the fact that this family would approach the organization in 2 months, and the fact that they will go through the procedure this again and again, there is something very frustrating.
اليوم اللي وين؟
على المقاصد إن شاء الله. على المقاصد.
ليش على المقاصد؟
عشان يجرى عملية زراعة عصب. محمد زراعة عصب في مستشفى المقاصد.
The first thing that we do is just to send a letter for the army with all the medical documents. We ask them to give them permits. If we are successful, then that's great. If not, then we go to the media or we take these petitions for the court. That they need to go through all this to have treatment, which is a basic right, is just absurd.
نفسي أرجع ألعب كرة، نفسي أرجع أصلي.
I would love to witness the day where the Palestinians will have functioning health system and they won't need permits in order to have basic rights of accessing health and receiving treatment.
What do you want to be when you grow up, Mohamed?
دكتور.
Which kind of doctor?
أعالج غزة.
Yeah. And why do you want to be a doctor?
أعالج الأطفال اللي زيي.
Before we bring the panelists on wonderful guests who have agreed to come and speak. I'd love to give everyone a moment to share any responses you have to the film. So if you want to use the chat box just to put in 1 or 2 words that are your response to the film. While you're doing that, I will pin the different panelists so that they're sharing space with me on the Zoom screen. But would love to hear any of the initial thoughts or responses to what we watched together. So we have infuriating from Henry. The problem is maddening and so inhumane from Bill. Great respect to those working so hard in such outrageous circumstances from Meredith. I echo that respect. Heart-wrenching to watch from Maris. Deeply upsetting and heartbreaking from Miriam as a Jew whose grandparents emigrated from Palestine to Canada. Heartbreaking, inhumane practices. And I encourage you to keep watching the responses in the chat boxes. I filmed this film in 2019, and I'm so grateful to be joined now by so many of the people who supported the ability to tell this important story. And I want to introduce the special guests who have come to be with us, because it's extraordinary that we've been able to have this collection of humans who not only supported telling this story, but who are doing this work day in and day out, fighting so that Palestinians in Gaza in particular and all over the occupied territories have access to one of the most basic of human rights, which is medical care. So we have with us Ghada Majadli, who is the director for Palestinians in the occupied territories for Physicians for Human Rights Israel. I think someone in the chat asked, what is PHRI? That's Physicians for Human Rights Israel. And Ghada will talk more about this, but when I first met Mohamed and learned of his situation, that he wasn't getting permits, I contacted Physicians for Human Rights Israel, contacted Ghada, who you also saw speaking in the film, and Ghada jumped right in with her colleagues and began advocating for Mohamed to get the permission for the surgery that he needed. And I worked, the reason I first came to see Mohamed's case and the other cases you saw in the film was because of Defense for Children International Palestine. And we're so lucky to have Miranda Cleland with us today, who is the communications manager for DCIP, who will talk more about their role in advocating for children. They advocate for children in all kinds of situations, but of course, we're talking specifically about medical care. Mohamed Lafi, who works with World Health Organization, and he's a public health professional who his focus is on access to healthcare. And Mohamed has sat with me countless times in Gaza and spent many hours briefing me on the update of what's happening in Gaza Strip as it's gotten worse and worse and worse over the years since I've been reporting from Gaza, which has been about 20 years. And Fadi Abu Shamala, who is my partner on the ground in Gaza for all of the work that we do there. And specifically in relation to this film, Fadi runs Donkeysaddle Projects Palestine Grassroots Distribution Project. And it's through that umbrella that we've been able to provide support for Mohamed's medical care and for medical care for other children who we've met in the course of Donkeysaddle Project's work in Gaza. But the person I am most honored to introduce you to today, and it's the first person we're going to hear from, is Mohamed Salah, who is the young man. You saw him in the film at a much younger age, at 12, almost 13 years old. He's recently turned 15 years old. And it is such an honor for me that I've had the chance to stay in touch with Mohamed all these years and stayed close friends and got to follow his case. As you know, he did get the surgery that he needed thanks to the intervention of PHRI and of DCIP, but he got it very late, right? It was a time-sensitive surgery, and it was only about 8 months after he was initially injured, that he was able to get that surgery that he should have had right away. But because of the denial, it was delayed. So I want to let Mohamed, with Fadi's help, be able to introduce himself and update us on his situation in the past couple of years since we've made the film. So Mohamed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. محمد مرحبا.
مرحبتين هلا.
كيف حالك؟
الحمد لله.
محمد ممكن تحكي لنا عن الوضع الحالي عندك؟ شو صار معك آخر شيء من بعد الأشياء اللي صارت بالتقرير اللي احنا كنا تفرجنا عليه، الفيلم تفرجنا عليه؟
من لغة الإصابة؟
يعني ممكن تبدأ من عند أول إصابة، بس يعني مهم أكثر إن تحكي لنا بعد الأشياء اللي شافوها الناس بالفيلم.
مرحبا، أنا محمد صالح، صابت في 5/10/2018. من الفيديو اللي شفتوه أنا حزين جدا، لأن قبل بضعة سنوات كانت رجلي موجودة وهلأ مو موجودة، بس الحمد لله. من يومها سافرت وعملت عمليات وعديت العناية المشددة وتعبت كثير، وحاولت إني يعني ما أخسر رجلي بس خسرتها، ولليوم أنا بعاني. بس الحمد لله من 2018 أنا بعاني من إصابتي ومن الوجع ومن الوجع الشديد يعني. سافرت وعملت عمليات وسافرت على المقاصد أكثر من مرتين يعني الحمد لله، وعملت عمليات كثير الحمد لله. في النهاية خسرت قدمي.
Okay. Jen, may I give the audience an update about Mohamed before translating what he has mentioned? Just, is it okay to? Yeah, because some of his answers need to be more to have more explanation. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this event today. So, our hero Mohamed Saleh has been shot by an Israeli sniper above his knee when he was 12 years old, severing his nerve and leaving him unable to walk. 2 nerve transplant surgeries had failed, and other attempts couldn't happen for several years. On October 19, it means around 2 months ago, the doctors amputated Mohamed's leg above the knee. And since that moment, Mohamed is doing a great job therapy to ensure that his pelvis doesn't become stiff. As the winter came, Mohamed's pain is increasing, and Majadli, which is one of Donkeysaddle's activities in Gaza Strip, we used to give a quick response. So we immediately bought him a gas heater due to the regular electricity. So according to, I was asking Mohamed to give us an update about his situation, and he said that, hello everyone, and I am Mohamed Saleh. I have been shot on October 5, 2018, and as you have watched the video, years ago I had a leg, and today I don't have it. I was suffering a lot. I tried my best to not lose my leg, but at the end I lost it. I'm suffering from my injury and from the hard, painful. I traveled twice to Al-Maqasid Hospital in Jerusalem, and I did 2 surgery, but it failed. At the end, I lost my leg. محمد ممكن تحكي لنا ايش اكثر شيء بالنسبه لك صعب? So I'm asking Mohamed what has been most difficult for him in this ordeal. محمد ايش اكثر شيء صعب بالنسبه لك في المصيبه اللي صارت معك؟
نتفاوض في عمر صغير مش قد الألم يعني. ويعني استمرت في الألم ل 13/10/2021. حتى بترت قدمي، والأسوأ إني يعني شفت الفيديو رجلي موجودة اتذكرتها.
I'm a child. I can't afford the pain. I had a leg till October 19, 2021, until my leg was amputated. When I watched the video with you, I saw my leg, and it was painful to me to see my leg. محمد، إيش الأشياء اللي كانت بتعطيك الأمل والقوة طول الفترة اللي فاتت اللي بتعاني فيها؟ So I'm asking Mohamed what has given him hope and strength during the last time since he was injured.
الإشي المميز يعني اللي أعطاني القوة هو جين وفادي، يعني كانوا يعطوني القوة ويصبروني ويوفروا لي الدكتور والعلاج. يعني شكرا لهم كثير، وكانوا يعطوني إنه في أمل في الحياة لسه، إنها ما نهاية الحياة. وكانوا يعني يقولوا يعني يعطوني تفاؤل أمل إنه يعني بطلت رجلي مو خلاص انتهت العالم، لسه في قدام دراستي ولسه بدي أتعلم وأتخرج بطلع دكتور إن شاء الله. وأنا بتشكرهم كثير فادوا وجين.
Okay, so he said that Jen and Freddie, he meant Jen Marlowe, and Freddie was giving me the strength, the hope. Thank you so much, Jen and Freddie. They were giving me the hope, and they were used to tell me it's not the end of the war. You have to keep going. You have to look for your life and keep studying, learning to grow up and be successful at the end. Thank you. شكرا محمد. شكرا محمد.
Mohamed, I want you to know that you give us strength and you give us hope. And as you know, I talk to you on Facebook Messenger sometimes 2-3 times in a week. Sometimes I'm not as good about keeping in touch with you as much as I want. And every time I talk to you, no matter what is happening in your situation, you greet me with the biggest, warmest smile. And every time I talk to you, I feel encouraged. I feel stronger. I feel hopeful. And that's because of you and your spirit and your immense heart and your immense samud and your immense spirit.
محمد، بحكي لك جين، أنا بدي إياك تعرف إنه أنت اللي بتعطينا القوة وأنت اللي بتعطينا الأمل. أنا صح بحكي معك 2-3 مرات بالأسبوع، كل مرة بحكي معك فيها أنت بتصنع الابتسامة جواي، أنت اللي بتمدنا بالقوة وبالشجاعة. روحك هذا اللي عندك والصمود اللي بتتميز فيه، إشي دائما بعلمنا دائما.
And we are. We have a question for you, Mohamed, from Layla. In the film, you said you want to be a doctor. Layla wants to know, you still want to be a doctor?
محمد، بالفيلم في سؤال من صبية اسمها ليلى، بتحكي لك بالفيلم أنت حكيت إنه أنت نفسك تصير دكتور. ضايل نفسك تصير دكتور؟
حكيت لك توا. إن شاء الله حلمي.
Yeah, and I just told you that it's my dream to be a doctor.
Well, you have a big. Oh, go ahead, Mohamed.
تفضل محمد.
أحكي إنه أنا من حلم وأنا صغير، يعني من قبل ما أتصاب إني أصير دكتور يعالج يعني الأطفال اللي مثلي، يعني على إني أحاول أنقذ أقدامهم، يعني ما أحسسهم مش في الألم اللي حسيت فيه، وأحس في ألمهم أنا كمان. ويعني وأسعدهم إن شاء الله وحلمها يتحقق.
Okay, Leila, he said that my dream is to be a doctor, kids doctor, in order to save all these kids and to make them happier.
Well, Mohamed, you have a big family of your own in Jabalia, but you also have a big family from around the world, including all of us on this call. And inshallah, we will stand right with you and help you make your dream come true.
محمد، انت لك عائله صحيح في جباليا، بس كمان في لك عائله كبيره في العالم كله، وان شاء الله كلهم راح يقفوا معك حتى تصير دكتور.
إن شاء الله إن شاء الله. وأنتوا عائلتي إن شاء الله.
God's will, and you are really my family. Mohammed, you have also a question. عندك سؤال. ميردث بتحكي لك يا محمد، الأطفال اللي هتشتغل معها يكونوا كتير محظوظين إنه عندهم دكتور زيك. بشو ما كان يكون شغلك، تأكد إن أنت راح تجيب السعادة والراحة والفرح للناس اللي أنت هتشتغل معهم.
إن شاء الله.
أنت بالفعل قاعد بتعمل هيك هنا. وليلى بتحكي لك الشرف إلنا.
أنا بتشرف.
Mohamed, thank you for your courage and your spirit. And I want to bring Ghada and Mohamed into the conversation because Mohamed's story is a testament to the injustice, as well as it's a testament to Mohamed's strength, but it's also shows the injustice and the oppression that no little boy should require the kind of strength that Mohamed has had to show. And Ghada and Mohamed Lafi, I'm hoping you can update us a little bit about the context today for medical care in Gaza. Why are there kids in Mohamed's situation? And how have things changed since 2019 when I made that film? Since 2019, we've had COVID. We've also had the recent assault on Gaza that was in May 2020. What is the update in terms of access to medical care in Gaza and the ability of patients to leave Gaza if they need to for medical care?
Hi, Jen. Good evening. Good evening to you, to Fadi, Ghada. Good evening to Mohammed and to your audience. Just let me give an overview of the situation in the Gaza Strip. Mohammed is just one case of many patients whose like Mohammed needs access to specialized medical care not available in the Gaza Strip. To the audience who don't know about Gaza, Gaza has been under occupation in the last 54 years. It was under very strict blockade from the sea, land, and air in the last 14 years. And there is a severe restriction of movement of the people and goods in and out of the Gaza Strip. Gaza is separated from the whole Palestinian territory. The other Palestinian territory in the West Bank is also segregated with, segregation walls, settlements, and settler roads, and military checkpoints, and difficulty, in movement as well. Patients and their companion, the medical staff, and the movement of ambulance staff is still a problem, and there are barriers for the movement of the medical staff and the patients, and those people need to be protected because they are protected by the international laws and humanitarian laws. The Gaza Strip, the health system in the Gaza Strip and Palestinian territory in general has been in development in the last 54 years under the Israeli occupation, and that's causes this system to be, weak, fragmented, and faces difficult challenges with availability of resources and specialized medical staff. Like if I give, some examples and evidences and numbers, the percentage of drugs which are reach, zero stock or depleted is about 84% of the essential drug list of the Ministry of Health, of the Palestinian Ministry of Health essential drug list, which is, developed by the Ministry of Health and the WHO, the World Health Organization. Also, the health system suffers from shortages of equipment, and it suffers of shortages of staff, and we have, this problem with the, the salaries because of the political divide between, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and in general, the medical staff is underpaid, and they face difficulties in their lives. The medical staff has had hardship cases in general, and they need somebody to take care of them. Also the whole situation of, the underlying social determinants of health in the Gaza Strip is deteriorating over the time. Like the housing situation, the water, the drinking water, the infrastructure, the income, the very high percent of unemployment. All these factors are affecting the life of the people in the Gaza Strip, and this, of course, leads to increase diseases and morbidity and mortality of the population. In addition of that, the Gaza Strip is exposed to violence and excessive use of force from time to time. The recent round was in May this year, and hundreds of people were killed and injured. This increased the strain on the already weak health system. And this, of course, has severe impact on the mental health status of the population. In addition to that, of course, we have, several health attacks against the health facilities. We recorded like tens of them during the last round of violence in May this year. There are several medical specialties and treatments not available in the Gaza Strip. Like the radiotherapy for cancer patient is not available totally in Gaza Strip, and for the service, we need to send patients outside the Gaza Strip. We used to send them to Augusta Victoria Hospital in East Jerusalem. We have the nuclear medicine scanning as well, and we need it mostly for cancer patients, and they have difficulty accessing these services because of the permit system imposed on the Gaza Strip. We lack, several diagnostic equipment and several specialized surgeries, and for all these cases, we refer the patients out of the Gaza Strip. Like if I give an indicator here about the elective surgeries waiting in the hospitals, like the average time for elective surgery on the waiting list is about 1.5 years. That's a general idea about the situation of the health system in the Gaza Strip. If we focus a little bit on the referrals thing, I have the numbers from January to November this year. Patients from Gaza submitted about 14,000 applications to access healthcare through Erez crossing to health facilities, either in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, or in Israel. About 48% of those applications were for female patients. 26% of these applications were for children under 18 years old, and 20% of these applications were for people aged 60 years or over. Those patients were destined to like 30% of these applications were for patients for applications for patients in the West Bank. I mean, for health facilities in the West Bank. Sorry for the confusion. 57% were to hospitals in East Jerusalem, and 14% of these applications to health facilities in Israel. The Palestinian Ministry of Health covered 86% of these referrals financially. They were covered by the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Now, the specialties needed for those patients were mainly for cancer patients. 43% of these applications were for cancer patients. 10% were for hematology patients, which is also another kind of malignant disease, mostly. 9% for patients with heart disease, 8% for patients with ophthalmic eye disease, 6% children, pediatric, 4% for orthopedic, and 3% for neurosurgery. Sometimes the Israeli authorities request the patients who apply for permits to go to medical treatment. They request them for security interrogation before applying as a prerequisite for approving their permits. And in this year, we have 39 cases were requested for security interrogation before processing their application. The response of the Israeli authorities to the 14,000 applications for patients were like follow. Like 63% of these applications were approved, which is 8,750 applications. But the rest of these applications, they were either delayed and lost their appointments in the hospitals, or they denied access. And we are talking here about 5,250 applications for patients. 9% of the patients who were approved, they needed ambulances. They were severe cases that they needed ambulances. And at Erez, we have, special procedure called back-to-back ambulance. Like the Palestinian ambulance will give the patient to another ambulance because the Palestinian ambulance cannot cross to the other side. The situation of permits for patient companions is much worse. Like in the same period from January to November this year, 16,700 applications of patient companions were submitted to the Israeli authorities. Only 40% of these applications were approved, and the rest were either delayed or denied. Also, patients or patient companions, sometimes they exposed to arrest at Erez crossing when they exit the Gaza Strip. And this year, we recorded 3 arrests of companions at Erez checkpoint. The last one was in November this year. Like we have 1 in January, 1 in the month of March, and 1 in November. 3 companions were detained. if we look at the historically about the approval rate percentage for the applications, I mean the patient applications in this case, the best year was 2012 when the approval rate was 94%, and the worst year was in 2017 when the approval rate dropped to 54% only. In 2018 it was 61, increased a little bit, and 2019 is 65%, and in 2020 it was 68%. From the beginning of 63%. So the access to healthcare is getting worse over the time, and with the at time of escalations and military operations, the approval rate dropped to much significant numbers. Like during the round of hostilities in May, it was only 30% in the month of May. 30% of applications of patients were approved, and 70% lost their appointments in the hospital, and they had to wait and retry applications again.
Mohamed,
but that, yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's the situation. I'm finishing. That's sorry. It took a long time, but the
a lot of important
number. Yeah. Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm done with that. And if you have any questions, I can explain more. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. That was a really comprehensive overview, both about why the de-development in Gaza and how that impacts the medical system. So why it is that Palestinians in Gaza don't have the ability to meet their own healthcare needs. And then also, so then they need to seek to go outside, and then a very comprehensive overview of the ways in which Israel controls the ability of Gazans to meet their own healthcare needs inside Gaza, and then controls their ability to go outside Gaza to get those needs met when they can't do it at home. So thank you for that overview. Ghada, I want to ask if you have anything to add to that, but also I'll give you another question, and then you can address them both together. When I interviewed you for the video and the article that accompanied it, you said something I found very interesting when you were talking about the permit regime. And you talked about it, I'm quoting you, that it was one way to use the need of this mother and of this kid to reach Israeli political objectives. And I think Mohamed touched on that a little bit when he talked about patients going to accompany patients and being arrested at the border, or patients going and they're required to submit to a security interrogation as a condition to be able to get their chemotherapy or get their medical needs. So I'm wondering if you can give a little more context about what you meant by that quote, and also if there's anything about the overview that Mohamed offered that you would like to add.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Okay, so good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I'm going to add a little to what Mohamed has said, and thank you, Mohamed, for all the information. I'm going to talk more specifically about how COVID-19 actually impacted the passage and movement of patients in Gaza, and what happened during and after the last attack on the Gaza Strip. And to your question, yes, what I said about the way that Israel take advantage of the needs of patients, and even more than this, we can also say that the permit regime is one way, and the bureaucracy of the permit regime is one way to actually tighten the control over the Palestinian population, over the space, and also over the management of the people. And it's another way to control and manage the Palestinian territory. For example, control over exports and imports, control over checkpoints, control of national resources, which also, as Mohamed says, impact the social determinants of health, and the permit regime. So I'm going to start with the how has COVID-19 actually impacted medical care capacity in Gaza? And I'll speak generally regarding the situation. So indeed, two major events happened since 2019. The first one was COVID-19 that impacted the healthcare system in Palestine in general, and specifically in the Gaza Strip, where during the COVID-19, we witnessed shortages in medical supplies, adding to the chronic and existing shortages, infections among health teams, and Mohamed talked a little about this, and also decrease in aid as countries face local challenges and more burden on the an already challenged healthcare system. So during COVID-19, not only that hospitals in Gaza reached full, excuse me. Okay, so I will continue.
Yeah, we can hear you still, Ghada. We can hear you.
Okay, so hospitals reached full capacity and even more. They were lacking manpower and were struggling with the medical needs. And what happened is with the spread of the COVID-19, also patients' movement was restricted and limited by Israel and by Hamas government in Gaza. The criteria for travel for medical purposes were changed and were limited to only life-saving treatments. Actually, patients who were permitted to exit were required to quarantine inside the Gaza Strip for 21 days, which means if you went to Al Maqasid Hospital or Augusta Victoria Hospitals, which should be 1 hour ride, and you spent half a day there, then when you go back to the Gaza Strip, you needed to be in quarantine for 21 days. So some of these facilities, the conditions were not appropriate for the medical conditions, specifically for patients with a low immune system. So some of these patients who received the permit actually had to give up their treatment due to the danger of infection on the journey to the hospitals or in the quarantine facility in Gaza, or that they could risk infection and make the journey to hospitals outside Gaza without any protection. So many patients preferred not to make the journey, thus remaining without urgent and life-saving treatment, for example, cancer patients. And the other event was the military attack on the Gaza Strip in May, where health teams had to handle also the Israeli aggression while still struggling with the COVID-19 challenges and the existing challenges since the siege on the Gaza Strip. I'm not gonna also elaborate on what happened during the recent attack on the Gaza Strip, because I know that also we are short in time, but I'm gonna say that there were damages to medical facilities by the Israeli strike, and according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, around 24 medical facilities were attacked directly or indirectly or injured by Israeli strikes. including a Rimal clinic, which was the only COVID-19 testing laboratory in Gaza. So I think I'm gonna stop here for the first question, and then I'm gonna continue for your second question, Jen. And I can say that from our experience and work with the Israeli authorities, or to be more accurate, challenging the Israeli authorities and their practices and policies, it showed that not only that, as I said in the movie, that the permit regime is arbitrary in the way that it functions, where a mother can be denied a permit for security reasons. Then when we intervene, such as the case with Mohammed, whether with a single letter to the army or combined with additional actions such as petition to the district court or the Supreme Court, their decision, the army decision, was reversed, and suddenly the mother or the patient imposes no threat to the Israeli state. Or when, for example, a patient obtained a permit and 2 months later he or she became a security threat, and then again when we intervened, then they obtained the permit. As I said, this experience and actions by the Israeli authorities raised a serious question regarding the reliability of the security reasons and security allegations, which are easily invoked by Israeli authorities and cannot be challenged actually by Palestinian patients. We have also examples where the Israeli authorities explicitly expressed utilizing the needs of the patient for a medical permit to maintain control over the Palestinians and also to tighten this control. As Mohamed said, interrogation of patients in order to gather intelligence information is one form of this practice, but there are more. For example, in 2018, PHRI, together with other human rights organizations, we petitioned the Israeli Supreme Court when more than 21 applicants for medical permit were rejected because patients had family member with ties to Hamas, according to the Israeli authorities. The state in the hearing argued before the Supreme Court that the patient's refusal, and I quote, reflected a decision made by Israel's security cabinet in January 2017, which ordered several operative measures to serve as leverage over Hamas with respect to returning captured and missing persons. The state also confirmed that the patients themselves did not pose any threat to Israel's security. And after we filed the petition, also Israel admitted that it had mistakenly identified 2 of the 7 patients as relatives of Hamas members. The justice in this case ruled that Israel's decision was invalid and stands in violation of fundamental human rights. More recently, after the military attack in May, the Defense Ministry, Benny Gantz, announced new policy. According to only those patients who lives are in immediate danger or who need to be transferred via ambulances in hospitals outside of Gaza will be allowed out. The decision was made in conjunction with the talks between Hamas and Israel in Gaza, and we had to petition the Supreme Court. And shortly after, the state reversed the decision and returned to the situation before the attacks before the attacks on the Gaza Strip, which is still the situation where restrictions, the COVID-19 restrictions were still applied.
Thank you, Ghada, for unpacking all of that. And one thing I just want to emphasize, Mohamed said, I think if I remember, it was 37 patients who were called for security interrogations. And I think a detail you added that is important that I want to make sure everyone heard is that often those interrogations are not about that person being considered a potential security threat, but it is used as a mechanism to try to get information from that person, whether about their neighbors, whether about their surroundings, other people who that they're in contact with. It's used as a leverage of control. It's not about what might be considered any legitimate security questions related to that individual. And I've done reporting actually on that issue as well. So hearing both of you speak, Mohamed and Ghada, we're bringing back a lot of details that I've heard from many of those patients. Miranda, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. From the film and Ghada, from hearing you speak, I feel like we've gotten a sense of some of what PHRI's role, Physician for Human Rights Israel, your role in helping to fight for folks to get their medical needs met. Miranda, I'd love if you could let us know a little bit about what Defense for Children International Palestine does, specifically in relation to medical access for kids.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Miranda, and I'm from Defense for Children International Palestine, which is the only child rights organization focused exclusively on children in the occupied Palestinian territory. So DCIP monitors, documents, and exposes human rights violations against Palestinian children. We have field researchers across the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. Whenever a field researcher hears that a child was injured, killed, or detained by the Israeli military, they immediately go to the scene to document all the details of what happened. This includes speaking to eyewitnesses, confirming details like the child's full name and age with the parents or other family members that are available, documenting what kind of weapon was used and what was happening immediately before the incident, and determining who perpetrated the violence. With these cases, sometimes it's very clear what happened, and sometimes it requires some additional investigation. So we collect this data and look for trends to expose Israeli human rights violations against Palestinian children. For example, Israeli forces killed 17 Palestinian children in 2021 with live ammunition. Under international law, intentional lethal force is only justified in circumstances where a direct threat to life or serious injury is present. However, investigations and evidence collected by our team suggest that Israeli forces use lethal force against Palestinian children in circumstances that may amount to extrajudicial or willful killings. In most cases where an Israeli soldier shoots a Palestinian child, whether he is killed or injured, or like Mohammed, is living with a lifelong disability as a result of that injury, that Israeli soldier very likely violated international law by using deadly and excessive force when the soldier's life was, in pretty much every circumstance, not threatened by the Palestinian child. So exposing these violations to the international community and calling out that no one is ever held accountable for injuring or killing Palestinian children is a key aspect of DCIP's advocacy work.
Thank you for that, Miranda. And I have, as someone who's tried to bring some of those stories to the forefront, I've so appreciated DCIP's connecting me. You're the reason why we are connected to Mohammed, and there's been so many other children and families that you've connected us to, and have had, just everyone who is, all the guests who are here I've seen on the ground the role that you've all played in doing the research to make sure that the information is there, that it's accurate, and that it's out in the world, and that it's able to have impact at the same time while fighting for conditions to change. So that's so important. And Miranda, I know that DCIP was one of 6 human rights organizations that back in October, just a little more than a month ago, the Israeli Defense Ministry named 6 human rights organizations, including Defense for Children International Palestine, as terror organizations. despite the fact that they have not provided any evidence that backs up that claim. And I'd be curious to know how that has impacted DCIP's work. In what ways has that impacted your ability to do your work?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So I'll start by saying that hearing this news was very scary. The Israeli authorities have not really made any designations like this in the past. And so really immediately after this happened, none of us knew what was going to happen. For some background for all of you, so instead of holding their military accountable for killing and injuring Palestinian children, in late October, Israeli authorities decided to criminalize DCIP along with 5 other Palestinian civil society organizations. As an organization, we've worked very hard in the last 30 years to expose Israeli violations of Palestinian children's rights, including leading successful advocacy campaigns in the US and across Europe. DCIP is also the legal representative for Palestinian children killed in the occupied Palestinian territory since 2014 at the International Criminal Court, which has recently opened an investigation into Israeli war crimes. In that investigation, one of the Israeli officials who could be prosecuted for war crimes is Defense Minister Benny Gantz. So he has a lot of incentive to sort of shut us down and shut us up. To be successful in this advocacy work is to make ourselves a target. This isn't the first attack we faced, but it is really a serious escalation with a lot of serious consequences. For a long time, for years, a network of pro-Israel civil society organizations with the support of the Israeli Foreign Affairs Ministry and other government agencies has pursued a really relentless campaign of delegitimization and disinformation against DCIP, claiming that our work to protect children, according to international law standards, somehow amounts to terrorism. These allegations are completely unsubstantiated and distort really critical factual and legal elements of our work. But these allegations in this decision is still negatively impacting our ability, like ours, to do this work and to advocate for Palestinian children. These allegations give Israeli authorities the legal ability to potentially seize our assets, which would include freezing bank accounts. They could arrest and imprison our staff with sentences up to 25 years for the executive director of the organization, or force the organization to close. We have not had any of those things happen so far, but they are very real things that could happen whenever the Israeli government decides to do it. So this is why we really need the international community to step up and use really all available means to hold Israeli authorities accountable for their targeted attacks and repression of Palestinian civil society organizations like ours. Because we know, this is a designation like this that Israeli authorities have made. But if the international community doesn't step up now, we will not be the only organizations targeted. They will move forward and target other organizations working on, the same issues or different issues. It doesn't matter. But there are really serious consequences if the international community does not hold Israeli authorities accountable to end international complicity and support to the Israeli apartheid regime.
Thank you. And you're talking about the need for the international community to stand firm, and that sets up perfectly Layla's question in the chat. And by the way, if anyone else have questions, please do put them in the chat. But Layla wants to know, how can we help? So as concerned citizens, what kind of ways can folks who are here listening to you, what kind of actions would be helpful? And this is not just for you, Miranda, this is for you, but for all of our special guests.
Yes, so I can start. So for the specific issue of Israeli authorities targeting Palestinian civil society organizations, if you're in the US, I'd like to ask you to contact your members of Congress and your elected officials and ask them to speak out and condemn the designation. Representative Betty McCollum, who is a representative in Minnesota, introduced a House resolution condemning the decision and calling on the Biden administration to pressure Israeli authorities to reverse the designation. So that's a really powerful legislative vehicle that we have right now. And so encouraging and insisting that your elected officials sign on to that is one really powerful way to stand up against this issue. Jen, you're
I
muted.
think after 2 years of Zoom, I would have that figured out by now. Thank you, Miranda. And I want to give a moment for the rest of our guests to either address that question of what folks can do to help, or also if there's any other final words or reflections that any of you would like to offer. I want to give you a moment to do that. As our guests are doing that, my colleague Kate, thank you, Kate from Just Vision, is going to be dropping a couple of links in the chat box. This is a link, there'll be a link to the article that was written that accompanies the film, and it goes a little bit more in depth. There's also a link to an exit survey, which helps us stay in touch with you. If you want to be in touch with Donkeysaddle Project's other work and the work of our partners, it gives us the ability to do that, also to give us feedback on this event. And also related to this question of how we can help, in a moment, my colleague Fadi is going to talk about that work that we do with Palestine Grassroots Distribution Project. There'll be a link to be able to make a further contribution in addition to your ticket donation that will go towards that. So those links are going into the chat box. And I'd love to ask Mohamed, either Mohamed Salah, Mohamed Lafi, Ghada, or Fadi, if you want to answer the question about help or have any other final words as we're starting to wrap up.
Thank you, Jen. I think from my side, you know, the issue of health access and the health situation, the Gaza Strip especially, and in the Palestinian territory in general, we still need to raise awareness among people, human rights activists at the international level, especially in the United States. I agree with the idea from Miranda to raise the issue with congressmen and with political representatives. Also, the health system needs much support. So whenever anybody can support the Palestinian health system, that would be a good idea. Also for helping medical staff to get out of the Gaza Strip for trainings and specialization. These are, you know, the main things that, I mean, major things that we can advocate for. Another issue I want to give just two other examples about children like Mohammed who suffer from lack of access. We had the story about a child called Amir. He is 3 years old from Khan Yunis, and this child has cancer in both eyes, and he lost both eyes. They inoculate the eye, remove the eye surgically for both eyes, and he needed follow-up and treatment. And this child delayed permit for 4 times. Imagine a 3-year-old child with cancer in the eyes. I have another heartbreaking story which we published in an October report. I can later forward the link to you. Her name is Zaina, and Zaina is 10 years old. She has a cancer called Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she needs radiotherapy, and the radiotherapy is not available in the Gaza Strip. And the family applied 4 times for her to get to East Jerusalem for radiotherapy, and unfortunately, she couldn't have a permit, and each time her permit application was under study. These are just 2 examples. I have like hundreds of people like this who lost 3 appointments, 4 appointments in the hospital. Many of them are cancer patients, many children, many old age people who don't bring any security threat on anybody, but still their permits remained under study and lost their hospital appointments all the time. These are just, 2 examples, but we have many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed. Yeah, there's unfortunately, there's no shortage of these individual stories. Ghada or Mohamed Salah, are there any final words that you would like to offer? Mohamed Salah, بدك تحكي كمان إشي؟
سلامتك شكرا.
Fadi, you're on mute. You're on mute, Fadi. There we go.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm planning to answer questions raised by Jess and the Pro account. And he said that is the situation better in West Bank, and is that because of collective punishment aimed at Hamas? Sort of is the situation in West Bank is better than Gaza Strip. That's right, but still it's very bad in West Bank, and I don't agree that it's because of the collective punishment is aiming at Hamas. For your information, Hamas has been founded in 1987, and the Israeli occupation started before 1948, before the Nakba. I want to announce. I want to highlight about an article has been published today by an Israeli website. It's Haaretz. It's a well-known newspaper. Today, it's published classified documents that reveals a massacre of the Palestinians in 1948. So it's not about Hamas. It's about punishing it's about collective punishments. It's aiming the Palestinian people themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi, for answering. Thank you for the question, and then thank you for answering that question. Some folks are asking about organizations that they can donate to that deal with medical issues. Don offered Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, which is a very important organization. And Fadi, as folks know, 50% of the ticket proceeds from today's event and donations go to DSP Small Project, the Palestine distribution, grassroots distribution project. And I'm wondering if you can give an overview of the work that we do and how that's connected to Mohamed Salah and the other children that we work with in Gaza.
Okay, thank you so much, Jen. So BGDB is an acronym to Palestinian Grassroots Distribution Project, which is a small grassroots project which began in 2015, focusing on medical care for children in Gaza and providing urgent needs for communities in Gaza due to the Israelis' ongoing military assaults and siege. BGDB is a program of Donkeysaddle's project. The story of BGDB started with a kid called Abdullah Bukash. It happened when Jen and I interviewed a man for an article that Jen was writing about the water and sanitation crisis in Gaza Strip. Abdullah's family lives in Wadi Gaza Valley, where the stream that used to flow through the community has become in recent years a stream of sewage leading from Nirbi to Sayrat refugee camp into the Mediterranean Sea. Abdullah's father stopped the car, our car, as we were about to drive away, and showed us a photo of his son, telling us that Abdullah, this is the name of his son, has a rare chest and lung disease, and could we help his son to get the care he needs. We began raising funds to ensure that Abdullah would be able to get the medical care he needs, and have been doing all we can since then to ensure he stay as healthy as possible. Since 2017, Jen's PCT fundraising hikes have supported, among others, of course, Abdullah's medical needs. There have been some scares over the past 7 years when Abdullah's health was doing poorly, and huge frustrations when the Israeli military denied Abdullah and his mother permits to continue his treatment in Tel Aviv hospital, and he is still denied till now, since 2017. So, but there has also been immense joy in watching Abdullah grow and in staying connected to his warm and loving family. That wouldn't happen without the donors' generous donation that helped us to provide Abdullah a special protein-rich diet weekly, regular medicine, doctor's fees, school transportation, and the cost of treatment in Israel, which is really was very expensive. Then we met Mohamed Salah, the hero of this event. Mohamed had been shot by an Israeli sniper above his knee, as I've mentioned before, when he was 12 years old, severing his nerve and leaving him unable to walk. In the 3 years that we have known Mohamed, we have been struck time and again by his huge heart and his compassion for others. Mohamed's 2 nerve transplant surgeries had failed and other attempts couldn't happen for several years. Since we know Mohamed, Majadli is providing him a special protein-rich diet weekly, regular medicine, doctor's fees, school transportation, and other things. As the BGDB resources increased, we decided to expand our activities. So as a response to COVID-19, we distributed tens of food baskets, and we continued in helping the needy families in Gaza Strip, especially the women who raised a family and have no assistance. We are talking about like the divorced and widow women. We also helped the kindergarten to be maintained twice after the war of 2014 and 2021. So this kindergarten was damaged by an Israeli aggression. We maintained the broken windows and doors. We covered the backyards to protect the kids from the hot sun. We built a new classrooms and painted the wonderful paintings on the kindergarten wall. Doctors believe that, again, for Mohamed, for our hero, Mohamed, so doctors believe that Mohamed will install artificial limbs after 6 months or a year from now, or after 2 years. So it depends on Mohamed's response to treatment and physical therapy and getting a healthy food regularly. BGDB has promised itself that will keep helping the needy community in Gaza Strip and our heroes Mohamed and Abdullah, and will not stop as long as your generous supports continue. Thank you so much.
Adi, thank you. And just to underscore what you said, with Donkeysaddle Projects, our primary work, is with storytelling in service of social justice. But our work doesn't end with trying to amplify these very important stories like Mohammed's. Whenever we see that there is a way that we can leverage direct support in order to make sure that their needs are met, Mohammed's needs, Abdullah's needs, so many of the other community members whose stories we partner with to amplify, then we strive to be able to make sure that support is intricately connected with the work we do. It's a part of the storytelling. And so that is where 50% of the proceeds from this event will go to our ability to keep doing this work, and the other 50% will go directly towards Mohammed's medical care and Abdullah and the other kids who we try to make sure that their needs are also met. My colleague Kate is dropping some important links. Like I mentioned, we would love you to take a few minutes to fill out an exit survey. It helps give us feedback on the event. It also helps us stay in touch with you. Donation link if you feel inspired to want to contribute to Palestine Grassroots Distribution Project. And thank you so much for these beautiful comments. We are a little bit over time, so I would like to officially say that the event will be ending, but I would like to invite anyone who feels that they can stay on for 5 minutes. There is one other short video that I would love to show. we were learning from Ghada and from Mohamed Lafi about the impacts of COVID-19 on Gaza Strip. And there's someone in our close community, a giant, a warrior for justice, who we lost to COVID-19, a woman in Gaza named Azza Qasem, who was a warrior for justice, a freedom fighter, who became one of my personal heroes. Fadi and I both met Azza in 2015, filming for the film Naila and the Uprising, which is a film, Just Vision film that I encourage everybody to see. And Azza agreed to take us to her home, which had been destroyed in the 2014 war, and talk to us from the rooftop of her destroyed home. And so in addition to her being featured in Nail and the Uprising, we made a very short film about Azza talking to us from her destroyed home. And for those who have, the film's only 4.5 minutes. So for those who have the opportunity to stay and to listen, to watch it, that would be a wonderful way to close this event, both to have that tribute to Azza, to think about the impact that COVID-19 has had, of course, not just on Palestine and Gaza, but on all of us in the world in terms of lives cut prematurely. But also Azza has some words that are truly inspiring to share with us that I think when it comes to sustaining us in the struggle, sustaining us in the fight for the Palestinian people and for people all over the world who are fighting for their liberation and for their justice. Azza's words guide us like no one else I know. So thank you for everyone, everyone who joined us for today's event. Thank you very much to Fadi and Miranda, Mohamed Lafi, Ghada. Especially thank you to you, my brother, Mohamed Salah, and my hero. And please do check out the links that Kate is dropping. And I would be happy for us to end on Azza's words. And Kate, I think I'll just go ahead straight to the YouTube since that seemed to work last time, as opposed to trying the other kind of screen share, the other screen share. So give me 1 second to do my screen share, and we will watch Just Before Dawn.
هذا بيتنا هذا الابيض هذا اللي كان تحفه هذا أنا ما كنت بدي أجي هون يعني هذا ثالث بيت للبيت هذا بيهدوا الاحتلال ثالث مرة من 2005 لهلا هاي ثالث مرة هذا غرفة المكتب أنا كنت خايفة من إنه أجي الأشياء لأنه أنا باعتقادي إنه لازم أخلي فراغ أو مكان للي جاي عشان ما نقع عشان نحتمل لازم يضل مكان للي جاي عشان نضلنا ماشيين. كفارنا؟ كل المنطقة كفارنا هذا كفارنا هيك فكرت بس هلا يعني خلص ما خلص لحظات حزن ألم بس بتتحول يعني بتعطي قوة على التحمل قوة على البقاء احنا اللي راح نضل لنا مكان بس احنا لازم نحافظ على إنسانيتنا حتى لو كانوا هم معنا مش إنسانيين
وأنا قناعتي إنه هذا بده إرادة منا. إذا ما دمروني من جوا يدمروا كل حاجة. ما أعتقدش حدا بقدر يدمرني من جوا. فما أعتقدش حدا بدمر الناس. ما حدش راح يدمر إنسانية الناس بغزة. أنا دايما بقول اللي بده يتضامن مع حق يتضامن، بس ما بحب شعور حدا يتعاطف معنا، لأنه أنا بحس هذا بقهرني، بقهر حريتي من جوا. ما بحب هيك. برفض أحكي عن غزة بهذه الصيغة، برفض أحكي عن النساء بهذه الصيغة، لأنه صيغة القهر أحس حالي مقهورة، هذا بقهرني. بالآخر أنا من حقي أكون بني آدم، يعني أحكي بحب وقوة. من حقي أحكي عن بيتي بحب وحزن. ما بحب التعاطف. التعاطف هو من قوي لضعيف. إحنا مش ضعاف، إحنا أصحاب حق مش ضعاف. وصاحب الحق مش ضعيف، صاحب الحق عشان يحق الحق هذا بده يكون عنده قوة. ورح نضلنا موجودين، وهذا لازم ينتهي. يعني يمكن أكثر وقت حلقة للظلام هو قبل الصبح. رح يجي الصبح، رح يجي. أنا واثقة إنه حيجي.
At the end of the film, oh, dang it, that's the YouTube thing again. There we go. At the end of the film, Aza says that the darkest period maybe is just before dawn, and insists on that the dawn will come. And I think certainly when I look at the state of the world, we maybe are in that darkest period before dawn. And when dawn does come, I know it will be because of the heroic and tireless work of all of the special guests who are here on this panel, Ghada and Miranda and Fadi and Mohamed Salah, you as well. And I hope that everyone here who comes will follow all of your work, Just Vision and Defense for Children International Palestine and the World Health Organization and Physicians for Human Rights Palestine. And also, I think all of us who are here, all of us have a responsibility to bring about that dawn and to be a part of that fight and to partner with all of you who are doing that work to hasten the coming of that dawn. And I know that your words provided just a little bit more motivation, a little bit more strength for us all to partner with you in bringing about that dawn. So thank you so much for coming, for speaking, for witnessing, for being together. And I look forward to celebrating the coming of dawn, all of us together, and hopefully soon.